Good morning. This is your daily briefing from the New York Times, today's headlines, for Saturday, August 15, 2026. I'm your host, and we have a full edition to get through, from a carrier group stranded by war in the Middle East, to a heat wave that killed 16,000 people in a single week across Europe, to the quiet death of a Cambridge scholar under investigation, and a conversation about whether artificial intelligence is pushing us toward a post-human internet. Let's begin. Our top story this morning is about the USS Abraham Lincoln, an aircraft carrier that has been deployed for more than 8.5 months, much of it in support of the war against Iran. The ship's supply problems didn't start with a mechanical failure or a budget shortfall. They started on the very first day of the war, when Iranian missiles and attack drones fell on a Navy base in Bahrain. That base, a major logistics hub the Navy has relied on for decades, was destroyed in retaliation for a U.S.-Israeli assault on Tehran. As it went up in smoke, the Navy lost its primary supply line in the region. The backup plan? Diego Garcia, a tiny island 2,200 miles from the Gulf of Oman. It's remote, it's austere, and it was never meant to sustain a carrier strike group at war. John Ismay, a former naval officer who deployed to Diego Garcia briefly after the September 11 attacks, reports that the Lincoln's crew is now dealing with shortages of basic supplies, safety and hygiene issues, and deteriorating mental health. When a reporter asked President Trump whether the deployment had gone on too long, he dismissed the concerns outright, saying the deployment had lasted not nearly long enough. He added, "No, they're not concerned," referring to the crew members' families. The disconnect between the White House and the deck plates is stark, and it traces directly back to that first Iranian barrage in Bahrain. Staying with Congress, but shifting to a very different kind of warfare, the campaign trail. Stock trading by lawmakers has become a central attack line in the midterm elections, wielded by both Republican and Democratic challengers against incumbents of either party. The practice enrages voters, and the numbers are staggering. Since the start of this term in January 2025, members and their families have collectively traded between $160 million and $664 million in individual stocks. Roughly a quarter of legislators on Capitol Hill have traded individual stocks this term. In Pennsylvania, Democratic Mayor Paige Cognetti is challenging Republican Representative Rob Bresnahan Jr., and she built her campaign announcement around his trading. This year he's already made 600 trades. Sold Chinese stocks the week of a tariff. Buys missile stocks before a war. Buys jet stocks before a big contract. Overseas crypto? Buys crypto stocks before a vote. The Stock Act of 2012 requires disclosure, but it doesn't ban the practice. And every cycle, the outrage builds, but the trading continues. Now it's becoming the kind of issue that can unseat an incumbent. Across the Atlantic, European diplomats are working quietly, urgently, to ensure they have a seat at the table if and when negotiations to end the Russia-Ukraine war begin. They are nervous, deeply nervous, about being excluded by President Trump. French, German, and British officials are developing a format for future talks that would be led by the three European powers, a European position meant to protect European interests. France and Germany are taking the lead, according to senior diplomats, but Russia has shown little interest so far. Stephen Erlanger, reporting from Berlin, notes that the effort is essentially a hedge. Europe knows the war must end, but it fears a deal cut over its head. The question isn't just whether Europe gets invited, it's whether the format they're building can survive contact with a Trump administration that has shown little patience for multilateralism, and a Kremlin that has shown none at all. In Afghanistan, the Taliban marked 5 years in power this past Saturday. The black and white flags flew high in Kabul. Shiny Mercedes-Benzes drove past graffiti praising the fighters' sacrifice in crimson paint, with depictions of drops of blood. Young Afghans chanted independence songs below posters hailing how the carpet of democracy had been removed for Islamic rule. But Elian Peltier, the Times' Afghanistan bureau chief, writes that the triumphant tone is only half the story. The Taliban have the country in a chokehold that spares no one. Women erased from public life, the economy collapsed, humanitarian aid restricted. Yet threats are starting to crack their veneer of stability. ISIS-K attacks persist, internal factions grumble, and the population's patience is not infinite. 5 years in, the Taliban are entrenched, embattled, and defiant, but the ground beneath them is shifting. While the Taliban celebrated, Northwest Europe was counting its dead. In a single week in June, during a record-shattering heatwave, deaths spiked by 16,000. Countries were unprepared. The heat hit hard and fast, and the infrastructure, homes, hospitals, emergency systems, simply wasn't built for it. Raymond Jong, reporting from London, explains that Europe is sweating through its fifth round of dangerously high temperatures since May. Climate scientists say the only surprise is that anyone is surprised. We've said for years that the burning of fossil fuels will continue to warm the planet, said Matt Patterson, a research fellow at the University of St. Andrews. It's the fossil fuels that's causing this. In some sense, it's that simple. But there's a deeper puzzle: changes in weather patterns, a stuck jet stream, a weakening Atlantic circulation may be amplifying the heat specifically over Europe, making the continent a hotspot in a warming world. The 16,000 dead in 1 week are not just a statistic, they're a warning. And in a tragedy of a very different kind, Jason Ardai, the Cambridge University scholar whose remarkable rise to stardom was followed by a rapid fall from grace, has been found dead. He resigned last week after the university announced an investigation into allegations of plagiarism and fabrication. His family said in a statement, Jason was subjected to a campaign of sustained abuse in the years since he accepted a role at Cambridge. The campaign of misinformation was too much for Jason, who was a gentleman and who always wanted to see the best in everyone. The Metropolitan Police said an ambulance was called to a South London residence on Friday afternoon after a report that a man had been found unresponsive. Ardai was 38. His death has reverberated through British academia and beyond, raising agonizing questions about institutional pressure, public shaming, and the human cost of a fall from grace. Back in the United States, the Justice Department quietly dismissed charges this week against a California man, James Patrick Lyons, who was set to go on trial Monday for sending hostile text messages to federal agents during an immigration crackdown in Minnesota. Prosecutors told a federal judge they had come to realize, days before trial, that they lacked conclusive evidence that Lyons had committed a crime. The dismissal adds to the scores of cases in the administration's deportation efforts that have unraveled. Ernesto Landano, reporting from Minneapolis, notes that the case was part of a broader pattern: aggressive charges brought in the heat of enforcement, then quietly dropped when the evidence doesn't hold up. In federal court in New York, Luigi Mangione pleaded guilty to stalking and killing Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare executive, in late 2024. "I shot Mr. Thompson," Mangione told the judge. He admitted he had stalked the executive before killing him. His lawyers said they would argue that his federal plea means he cannot be tried for murder in state court, a legal maneuver that will test the boundaries of double jeopardy. The killing unleashed a torrent of public outrage against the health insurance industry, outrage that has solidified into deep mistrust. Reed Abelson reports that much of the current dissatisfaction stems from rising economic concerns. More and more people cannot afford increasing premiums in medical bills. Consumers are directing their ire at behemoths like United Health Group, which owns United Healthcare, OptumRx, and sprawling networks of doctors and clinics. The anger isn't fading, it's hardening. In Michigan, a series of shootings across Misaki County left 6 people dead, including the gunman. Chad Hickman, 39, killed 5 people: a 45-year-old man, a 40-year-old woman, a 16-year-old boy, and 2 others, before taking his own life in a wooded area near Whitlock Lake in Caldwell Township. State troopers were called to a home in Lake Township at 11:40 a.m. Friday for a report of a person shot, and found the first 3 victims. A motive was not immediately known. Mark Walker and Ishani Desai report that the shootings appear to have been a rampage across multiple locations, a rural community shattered in a single morning. In Florida politics, a South Florida rally headlined by Representative Rashida Tlaib became the latest flashpoint in the Democratic Party's internal battle over Israel. The event, called Chomp the Oligarchy, was meant to support 3 progressive candidates, 2 running for House seats, 1 for Senate, who faced Jewish Democrats in Tuesday's primary. The venue in Fort Lauderdale backed out on Thursday after State Representative Michael Gottlieb, a Democrat and chairman of the Florida Legislative Jewish Caucus, pressured the venue to cancel. Tim Balk reports that the cancellation underscores the deep fractures in the party, where support for Palestinian rights has become a litmus test that can cost candidates institutional backing, even in a Democratic primary. On Capitol Hill, the list of the biggest stock traders in Congress reads like a who's who of power and proximity to market-moving committees. Olivia Diaz reports that some lawmakers and their families have traded millions of dollars worth of stocks since the start of this term. The Times analysis of financial disclosures shows the scale: millions in trades, oftentimes suspiciously close to legislative action. The pressure to ban congressional stock trading is building, but so far, the practice remains legal, disclosed, and lucrative. In technology, Google has turned on its Gemini AI chatbot for K-12 students using its Classroom app. Until this week, Gemini was automatically enabled only for students 18 or older. Now, more than 150 million students and teachers worldwide have access to an AI assistant baked into the platform where they post assignments and turn in schoolwork. Natasha Singer, who has covered tech in schools for more than a decade, calls it an escalation in the race among U.S. tech giants to train students on their artificial intelligence tools. The pedagogical implications are enormous and largely untested. What happens when a generation learns to write, research, and think with an AI copilot from elementary school onward? The fury at health insurers persists, months after the killing of Brian Thompson. Higher premiums and rising medical bills have intensified Americans' dissatisfaction with their medical coverage. United Health Group, the parent company, has become a lightning rod not just for the killing, but for the entire architecture of American healthcare: the prior authorizations, the denied claims, the pharmacy benefit managers, the vertical integration that makes the insurer also the provider, the pharmacy, the data broker. The outrage isn't just about one murder, it's about a system that feels predatory to the people it's supposed to serve. In Pensacola, Florida, Jelly Whitehurst, known as Candy, spent nearly 40 years sewing the Blue Angels' blue and yellow flight suits. The Navy pilots, renowned for acrobatic moves at air shows across the country, trusted her with the gear that keeps them alive in high-G maneuvers. Then, last month, she reached out to an officer about taking measurements for new suits. That's when she learned the Navy had awarded a $1.7 million contract to a defense contractor in Virginia. Michael Levinson writes that Whitehurst was blindsided. A small business, a lifetime of institutional knowledge, replaced by a big company with a lower bid and a faster production line. The Navy got its suits. Candy Whitehurst got a phone call. In New York City, a 46-year-old man named Larry Montez was arrested and charged with a hate crime after disrupting Shabbat services at Central Synagogue in Manhattan. He struck a congregation member and a security guard and damaged property. Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch said Montez, a Bronx resident, had been escorted out when the assault occurred. The attack comes amid a surge in anti-Semitic incidents in the city, and the hate crime charges reflect the seriousness with which authorities are treating it. Mayor Zoran Mamdani, a Democratic socialist who won the mayoralty over strong objections from the business class, tried to build bridges. He met with executives, attended the groundbreaking of American Express's new headquarters in Lower Manhattan. But the détente was fleeting. Lauren Hirsch and Dana Rubenstein report that many business leaders, some of them Jewish, bristle at the mayor's frequent anti-Israel statements and his tax-the-rich rhetoric. They worry that joining his business advisory council would be perceived as an endorsement. The council, meant to be a conduit for dialogue, is struggling to find members. The mistrust runs deep, and the mayor's attempts to appease haven't closed the gap. And in a case that blends tragedy with infrastructure failure, the family of Romansh Mahajan, a teenager killed when a carriage horse bolted in Central Park, has filed legal notices claiming stray electrical current played a role. In 4 notices of claim against the city and several agencies, a formal step toward lawsuits, the Mahajan family asserts that stray voltage spooked the horse, causing it to run off. Ed Shanahan reports that the city council appears set to pass a bill banning carriages from the city in 2 years. The family's filing adds a new, invisible danger to the long debate: the current beneath the streets. In the arts, a legal battle over a trust fund hinges on California's Slayer statute. Nick Reiner, the younger son of director Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer Reiner, is accused of killing his parents. He wants access to a $1.6 million trust for his legal defense. The trustee says the Slayer statute, which prevents someone who unlawfully kills another from inheriting from the victim, blocks him. Reiner has pleaded not guilty and is currently represented by a public defender. Julia Jacobs and Matt Stevens report that the case raises a grim legal question: can a man accused of murder use his potential inheritance to pay for his defense, or does the accusation itself sever the financial lifeline? Daniel Barenboim, 83, is back on the podium. Parkinson's disease forced him to step back from the Berlin State Opera, but he's leading his West-Eastern Divan Orchestra, the ensemble of Arab and Israeli musicians he co-founded with Edward Said, on a European tour. Daniel Lewis, reviewing from Berlin, writes that Barenboim's movements on stage were few, but often effective. He conducted seated, his left hand barely moving, his right tracing the architecture of the music with precision. In a 2006 interview, Barenboim declared a special affinity for Mozart. "Look, I know very well what it means always to be too young for everything." Now, navigating a debilitating illness, he seems suddenly, sadly too old for many things, but not for this. The music, and the mission, still move through him. HBO's new Green Lantern series, Lanterns, premieres its 8-episode first season. Mike Hale reviews it as the latest show in which being a superhero is no fun at all. It's essentially a buddy cop story, putting two of the best-known lanterns, Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart, into a gritty, grounded mystery that owes more to True Detective than to comic book spectacle. The Green Lantern oath in Brightest Day, in Blackest Night allows for both, but this series is almost entirely about the dark night of the superhero's soul. The intergalactic cop corps, the 3,600 sectors of the universe, the power rings fueled by will, all of it is there, but filtered through a lens of exhaustion and moral ambiguity. Being a superhero, on prestige television, has become a metaphor for burnout. In books, the question of when it's okay to give up on a book sparked a flood of reader responses. From carefree dabblers to book group diehards, everyone has an opinion. Some finish every book on principle, others abandon ruthlessly at page 50. Some feel guilt, others feel liberation. The consensus, if there is one, don't tell anyone else theirs is wrong. Reading is personal. The contract between reader and book is negotiable, and the only non-negotiable rule is that you get to decide. For younger readers, for new picture books explore sleep and dreams. Ben Hatka, author and illustrator, reviews works that cover everything from gods to insomnia. One book follows a child who discovers that dreams are a place you can visit, another personifies sleep as a gentle giant, a third explores the mythology of the Sandman, a fourth tackles the frustration of lying awake while the world rests. Hatka, who kept a dream journal for years, writes that the practice was revelatory, trying to scribble down the essence of that other land in the few moments of semi-wakefulness before the new day takes hold. These books, he says, honor that liminal space. In food, a corn salmon chowder that may be the best summer soup, light, brothy, showcasing fresh corn and tomatoes. And in South Dakota, the steak nosh is chislicked cubes of meat, traditionally lamb or mutton, deep-fried or grilled, served with garlic, salt and crackers. When there's chislick around, a cold beer and saltines must also be on hand. It's meaty, magnificent, and unapologetically regional. In science, prospectors are staking mining claims on land that President Trump cut from two national monuments in Utah. About a month after he sharply reduced the size of Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante, at least 9 mining claims have been staked on land no longer protected from development. Maxine Hoselo reports that the former boundaries are rich in wildlife habitat and archaeological treasures, and also sit atop vast reserves of uranium and other precious metals. The claims suggest companies are racing to dig. The monuments were designated to protect cultural and natural resources. The reduction opened the door to extraction. The race is on. Why does Europe keep getting pummeled by heat waves? The whole planet is warming, but changes in weather patterns could explain why the continent suffers so many bouts of severe heat. Raymond Jones details the puzzle: a stuck jet stream, a weakening Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, soil moisture feedback loops that turn warm spells into lethal events. Europe is a hotspot not just because of global warming, but because of how the atmosphere and ocean are rearranging themselves around it. The 16,000 dead in one June week are the receipt. A judge in Michigan rejected a lawsuit by a conservative group trying to force the University of Michigan to hand over emails from a law professor, Rachel Rothschild, who worked on climate superfund bills legislation that would require oil companies to help cover the mounting costs of climate change. Chief Judge Michael Godola ruled the emails were not subject to open records laws because they didn't relate to the professor's official duties. Karen Zrake reports that the decision is a win for academic freedom, but the broader battle over climate accountability and who pays for it is just beginning. The FDA has classified an egg recall as Class 1, its highest risk designation. Nearly 20 million eggs were recalled in July over salmonella concerns. Midwest Poultry Services voluntarily recalled 19 million white shell and brown cage-free shell eggs sold under several brand names in 6 states, after samples at Texas farms tested positive. The classification signals a reasonable probability of serious adverse health consequences or death. Elena Serro reports that the eggs were distributed to grocery stores. Consumers are urged to check their cartons. As the largest Cyclospora outbreak in U.S. history wanes, experts are weighing in on whether iceberg and other fresh produce are safe again. Since May 1, tens of thousands have been sickened by Cyclospora from contaminated iceberg lettuce. In August, a salmonella outbreak linked to jalapenos affected at least 345 people in 27 states. In a CBS News poll, 40% of nearly 2,200 adults said they were eating less produce because of the outbreaks, and almost half said they had little to no confidence in the FDA. Kyle Diamantis, the acting FDA commissioner, says the risk is declining, but the trust deficit remains. Brad Pitt disclosed in an Esquire interview that he's started drinking again after 7 years of sobriety. He said he drinks in a more restrained manner, never in large quantities, and has pulled back when he got overconfident. His comments revived a key question in recovery circles: whether someone who once drank dangerously can ever drink moderately. Mark Walker reports that experts say it's not inherently unsafe for everyone, but it's not for everyone, and the line between controlled drinking and relapse is treacherously thin. Pitt quit in 2016, the year his marriage to Angelina Jolie collapsed. His return to alcohol, careful as he says it is, has sparked a conversation that never really gets resolved. In real estate, 3 two-story cottages on the Icelandic island of Hrysi offer scenic views and close access to mountains, glaciers, and waterfalls. Hrysi sits in Eyjafjörður, one of the country's longest fjords. It's 4.5 miles long, 1.5 miles wide, a birdwatching destination with 40 nesting species and no natural predators. The island is largely car-free. A 15 to 20-minute ferry reaches the mainland village of Árskegsandur, about 5 hours northeast of Reykjavik by car. Alison Greger describes a summer house that feels like the edge of the world, because, essentially, it is. Ian Fraser, the soft-spoken reporter and humorist, wrote Coyote vs. Acme in 1990. Now it's a movie. The piece, a legal briefing in which Coyote sues the Acme company for defective products, has finally gone Hollywood. Fraser's humored deadpan, precise, deeply literate, has long been a staple of The New Yorker. Seeing it on screen is a rare treat for fans who've waited 3 decades. Fall fashion is rich with texture, knits that play with traditional patterns and palettes, made for free spirits. The season's best pieces feel handmade, even when they're not cable stitches, feral, oversized silhouettes in earth tones and jewel tones. It's fashion that invites you to wrap yourself in it and walk into the wind. We lost 3 notable lives this week. Mark Rydell, the actor-director known for On Golden Pond, died at 97. Having started as an actor himself, he coaxed sensitive work from Bette Midler, Katharine Hepburn, Henry Fonda, and John Wayne. He directed The Rose, The River, For the Boys. He was a bridge between the studio system and the new Hollywood, a director who understood performance from the inside. John Caro, a prominent New York jurist, died at 98. Decades before his rise to the appellate court, he was a probation officer in the Bronx who tried to help a 13-year-old chronic truant named Lee Harvey Oswald. He spent 25 years on the bench, after working as a police officer, social worker, and mayoral aide. He was the first Puerto Rican named to the first department of the state Supreme Court's Appellate Division. His life spanned the Bronx of the 1930s to the highest courts of New York, and he never forgot the boy he couldn't save. Hiroshi Okuda, the disruptor who revived Toyota in the 1990s, died at 93. As president, he made decisions quickly and shook things up, expanding overseas manufacturing and introducing the Prius, the world's first hybrid car in regular production. He was the first executive outside the founding Toyota family to lead the company in almost 3 decades. He tightened decision-making, globalized production, and bet on a technology the industry dismissed. The Prius changed everything. Okuda, a company man since 1955, proved that even a giant can turn if someone is willing to grab the wheel. In the magazine, Callie Holterman asks, what happens when the chatbots start talking to each other? We already use AI for job applications, school essays, dating profiles. Christian Vinson spent close to 10 hours teaching 2 AI chatbots to apply for finance jobs on his behalf. They wrote his cover letters, optimized his resume, even negotiated salary ranges and simulated conversations. The bots are becoming our agents. But when they begin negotiating with other bots, hiring bots, admissions bots, dating bots, the human drops out of the loop entirely. We're building a post-human internet, one where software talks to software, and we're just the data sources. The question isn't whether this is coming. It's what happens to us when we're no longer the interlocutors. In Opinion, Ezra Klein hosts a conversation on the warring visions of American power. Could international law, so weak, so often ignored, provide a framework for a foreign policy after Trump? The devastation wrought on norms and rules is real. But some on the left are turning to the rules America helped write, asking, what if we just followed them? Could the architecture of international law, battered as it is, be the foundation for something more moral, more just? Tressie McMillan Cottom writes that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is running, or at least soft-launching a presidential bid. She spoke on foreign policy at the Munich Security Conference, visited a rural Georgia community fighting a data center, and this week released a video series about freezing her eggs. The rollout is personal, confessional, intimate, and utterly of this moment. But Kadam asks, is she ready for the glass cliff? The phenomenon where women are elevated to leadership only in times of crisis, set up to fail. Ocasio-Cortez will run as a woman, but unlike how every woman before her was forced to run. The question is whether the structure will allow her to run on her own terms. Gregory Conti and Aaron Sabarium, critics of DEI who largely agree with the Republican war on woke, warn that Republicans are about to repeat the Democrats' biggest mistake, the reluctance to gatekeep. They argue that the right's refusal to police its own extremists, the conspiracists, the authoritarians, the racial nationalists, may be its undoing, just as the left's refusal to police its excesses alienated the center. Gatekeeping isn't suppression, it's standards. Without it, a movement becomes a mob. In an op-doc, firefighters in Phoenix race to save lives in a city that's only getting hotter. Filmed during some of the hottest days of 2025, in one of the hottest years on record, the documentary shows temperatures reaching 118 degrees. The filmmakers embedded with Station 18, one of the busiest in Phoenix, documenting a specialized technique of ice bag immersion for people facing life-threatening heatstroke. Extreme heat is the new normal. The inferno isn't coming. It's here. Jessica Taylor and John Guida assess the midterm hurdles for both parties. The electoral map for Democrats is shrinking, or maybe expanding, the messages are contradictory. Factional battles are unruly on both sides. With summer primaries largely complete, the fields are set. The midterms will be a referendum on Trump, on the economy, on the culture war, but mostly, they'll be a test of which party can hold its coalition together. And Greg Jensen and Nir Bar-Diyeh, leaders of Bridgewater Associates, the $102 billion investment firm, write a guest essay arguing that AI policies will hurt their business and they should do them anyway. They believe AI is on the brink of a productivity miracle, but only if we act now to prevent its worst impacts. They'll be disproportionately subject to the taxes and regulations they recommend. They make the recommendations anyway. The risks posed by AI are too great to forego any regulation, even for those who stand to gain tremendously from its rise. That's your briefing for Saturday, August 15, 2026. From the deck of the Abraham Lincoln to the streets of Kabul, from the heat deaths of Europe to the quiet death of a scholar in London, from the stock trades of Congress to the AI chatbots writing our cover letters, the world turns, the news accumulates, and we try to make sense of it. I'll be back tomorrow with the next edition. Until then, stay informed, stay cool, and take care of each other.